Hello, everyone. This is Michael Govier from the Cinema 9 podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 288, Sliding Doors Movie Review. I'm Chris McBrien, along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now, this week, Derek, you nominated the 1998 Gwyneth Paltrow film, Sliding Doors, for us to review, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But before we do, what is new in the world of pop culture for you, my friend?
Hey, Chris. Well, been a busy week, and so I only had a chance to watch one thing, and it was a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Well, I will say, I'm glad if you only had to do one thing, that it was one of your documentaries. So please do share. What is it?
Well, it was a hockey documentary.
Oh, even better. We're
so
Canadian.
It just dropped on Amazon Prime. So just in time for the NHL hockey playoffs, there's a new hockey documentary available on Amazon Prime called Saving Sakic. Now, you may not know this about me, but Joe Sakic is one of my all-time favorite hockey players. And he was,
I do know that about you, actually.
He was the man in the late 90s.
Yep.
He's amazing. He won 3 Stanley Cups as a player. He won a Stanley Cup as an executive, as part of the management team when the Colorado Avalanche recently won. His accolades are amazing. You look him up, you're going to be shocked at how good he was. In any case, this documentary is about the year after the Colorado Avalanche won the Stanley Cup championship in their first year in Colorado. The New York Rangers made an offer to Sakic for $15 million. And knowing that the Colorado Avalanche were pretty much broke, they didn't have a lot of money at the time. The rules were such that if they couldn't match or beat the offer in 7 days, then Sakic could go wherever he could go to the Rangers. And so the documentary is about those 7 days and how they decided whether or not they were going to come up with the money and how they were going to do it. And what made it even more interesting is the group that owned the hockey team also owned a movie studio, and the movie Air Force One with Harrison Ford had just been released, and they owned that as well. So there's this sort of cross-pollination between the success of the Air Force One, the movie, Harrison Ford becoming personally involved with this, and all this stuff. It was this bizarre series of events. I mean, spoiler for anyone who's a hockey fan, he stayed in Colorado the rest of his career, so they obviously came up with the money. But even as a fan of hockey and a fan of Sakic at the time, I had no idea this was going on. I had no memory of this. And it's a really short documentary. It's only about 45 minutes, but it was fascinating. So even if you're not a huge hockey fan, just the way that the politics and the money and the tweaking of the rules and the manipulation of this is what the rules say we can do as far as the bargaining agreement and the offering of money to this player. No, it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And they had interviews with literally everybody involved. Sometimes you see these documentaries where something happens and then they go, so-and-so declined to comment for this documentary. And you're like, yeah, probably because you're not painting them in the best light. In this case, everybody involved talk. Even Joe Sakic and Harrison Ford are in the documentary. So, no, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Saving Sakic. So that was my only recommendation, my only watch this week, and I definitely recommend it. Solid A from me.
One of the last guys, too, to have his whole career with one franchise. Because he started with Quebec Nordiques, and they moved to Colorado. So he technically didn't change franchises.
Yeah, exactly. Technically. But
but there was him and Yzerman was like that, too. But there haven't been, since then, the players just go wherever the money is. So they just move from team to team to team.
Well, between the money and the drive for a championship, look at someone like Ray Bourque, right? He played in Boston all his life, and then he plays last 2 years in Colorado because he wanted to win. And at the time, the Bruins weren't that good. So
Exactly. So yeah, Sakic was a dying breed. That was for sure. I got one for you, Derek. Apparently, I surprised a few people this past week. So I heard all about this on social media from some other people. They got on my case a little bit. So I had never seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, and people couldn't believe it. I mean, I guess I get it. You know, like I'm a big movie buff and stuff. I'd never seen it, but
you're not really a sci-fi guy. I remember when we did the first Alien movie. Same thing. You're like, I've never seen it. I'm not really into sci-fi. So
I've always been too busy watching comedies from the 70s and 80s. I think that's my thing, you know? And the thing was too, like, I guess I always felt that this was one of those films that you just have to watch on the big screen. So one thing, ever since the pandemic, Cineplex has been showing old movies from time to time. And I think I mentioned last year, my son and I went to see Jaws.
Right.
In 3D.
That, yeah.
Not Jaws 3 in 3D. It was like that stupid one from 83. The original Jaws from 77, they released it in like 3D and 4K. It was awesome. So what Cineplex has started doing is they run these things, they call them events. And the event that they're running right now is called the Kubrick Collection. So every week they show a different Kubrick film. So like Dr. Strangelove and, you know, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, Shining, so on and so on. So I took my 14-year-old son and we went to see 2001: A Space Odyssey. Question for you. Have you ever seen it, Derek?
Yeah, a few times. I've only seen it in its entirety, I think maybe 2 or 3 times, but I've seen bits and pieces of it way more than that.
So I went to see it on the big screen, and I got to tell you, it was amazing. Amazing.
It's a classic for a reason.
One of the most incredible experience I've ever had, like watching a film in a theater on the big screen. I thought it was a masterpiece. So the movie opens up with 10 minutes of total darkness and just eerie orchestral music playing. 10 full minutes of total dark. I guess it was like an overture or something like that. I don't know if it was in the original, you know, theatrical release to kind of pipe people into the seats or something. I don't know. I mean, it's probably not on the DVD or anything like that, and then halfway through, it just says intermission. Well, they didn't actually have an intermission, like it was, the lights didn't go up and stuff. It just was followed by another 10-minute overture. Black screen, eerie music. It was, even my son was like, is this normal? Is this supposed to happen? You know? So this film's use of sound and music is just amazing. It's basically art, you know? Yes. And the thing was, my son was just totally confused by it all. So I tried to figure it all out. I was trying to piece everything together. I think the point of the film is that you're just supposed to interpret it any way that you like. Like, it's just open to interpretation, you know? I feel like it's about mankind's evolution and like how first we explore Earth and then the moon and then Jupiter and beyond. And at each of these sort of stages, there's like mankind evolves with the help of this alien, you know, thing, this monolith thing. And then finally there's that fetus in space. It's like almost like this higher form of being that you evolve into or whatever. I don't know. It's either all that or it's just about taking LSD and tripping really, really, really hard. I'm not sure, because some of the scenes in it too, like when Dave at the end is going from Jupiter and beyond and he goes like through that dimensional thing and there's all those weird,
all the rainbow
colors. Like this isn't just like going through some rainbow colors. It's going through rainbow colors for like over 12 minutes. You're like, what the hell? But yeah, no, I thought it was incredible. You said you've only seen it sort of through and through once?
No, 2 or 3 times, but not recently, and never on a big screen. I think the largest screen I've probably ever watched on is maybe like a 27-inch, like the old 27-inch square TVs.
Right.
I think when I was working at Blockbuster Video, that's probably the last time I saw it. So that would have been, 25, almost 30 years ago now.
Right.
So might be time to watch it on the home theater system.
Yeah, or if it comes to your local theater, go see it on the big screen. That's what I recommend, because I couldn't imagine watching this on a regular sized TV screen. It just would not be the same with the music and the loudness. And then even some of the scenes in space, it's so quiet. All you can hear is the breathing for like 12 minutes long. Like, it's supposed to give that impression of just being out in space. Oh, it was good. Okay. Anyway, that's what I did. But I also got you this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, What did the shy piece of corn say when it received a compliment?
I don't know.
Aw, shucks.
That was a pretty corny joke there, Chris.
Yeah. One thing I've always appreciated about you is your sense of humor.
We got a bleeder!
36, does that include me?
Because if you've seen Juan, you've seen them all.
You know, man, I gotta take one more turn around the horn here.
Can fart jokes.
Fine, be in the
Why?
Hey, try to just on your way through the parking lot.
Join the club.
What day did the Lord create Spinal Tap, and why couldn't he rest on that day too?
All right, Derek, it was over to you this week to nominate a film for us to watch and review, and you went with Sliding Doors from 1998. It's over to you. You can pick any film that you want, anything from any, generation. You usually pick a little bit newer stuff than I do because I stop at 1989. You went back quite a few years, obviously. You went back like 26 years. So why this film? Why do you want to watch this movie and have me watch this and review it? And obviously you like it, I guess. So just give me an overview of why this.
Sure. So like you said, pick anything I want. I find that we underserve the 90s. But at the same time, I think there are so many.
That's
good
probably
movies.
pretty fair. Yeah.
I think there are so many good movies from the 90s that you can really go down that rabbit hole. Like we could probably do a whole year where we do nothing but movies from the 90s. And I think there would be a lot of interesting topics and interesting shows. So honestly, I try not to pull from the 90s very often for exactly that reason. You tend to do the 80s, and then I try and get things a lot newer. So in any case, I felt it was time to sort of look back at the 90s again. And this one, to me, one of the reasons I wanted to have you watch it was simply because I felt like watching it again. I watched it during the pandemic, and it had been a while since I had seen it prior to that. And I remember thinking, wow, I like this a lot more than I remembered. Like I knew I enjoyed it, but I was like, I really liked it. And then so I had a feeling like, you know what, I think I'm going to revisit that again soon. So when I had this opportunity, I thought, here, perfect. I'll have you take a look. Because I remember the last time when I brought this up that told you I watched it, you said you had never seen it before.
Nope, never seen it.
And so I thought, I always find that we have a better show if it's something that you've never seen before, because then we get a more visceral reaction out of you. I also know that you often watch these movies with your wife, and not that really motivates my pick, but I had a strong sense that this was one that she would at least sit down with you to start watching. She may not watch the whole thing, as often she gets up and leaves if she doesn't enjoy it, but that's neither here nor there. But part of the reason I wanted you to watch this was this idea of the term sliding doors. So I don't know about you, but this term seems to come up in pop culture a lot for me. I hear it a lot on podcasts. I've heard it from time to time in sort of just general conversations where people talk about a sliding doors moment. It comes up in sports radio a lot too, I find, not that I listen to that a lot, but this idea of the road not taken, or, well, if only this had happened, this could have been the outcome. And this is something, even on YouTube videos, I see this a lot, especially where, again, going back to sports, where they talk about, well, if this player hadn't been traded to this team for this guy at this time, this draft pick may have gone here. And they refer to it often as a sliding doors moment. And I don't know how or why that sort of became part of the vernacular. Maybe I'm just odd. Maybe it's not as popular as I think. But the idea of the could have been, would have been, should have been, the idea of fate versus choice. This is an interesting topic that I always find fascinating. And not a lot of movies do it well, and I felt this movie did a pretty good job of it, and I just thought this movie was quite entertaining. And honestly, Gwyneth Paltrow has never looked better. This is her at her absolute peak of beauty. Like, regardless of sort of some of the craziness she's gotten into in the last decade, like at this time in her life, wow, talk about a smoke show. Holy cow, is she hot in this movie. So if nothing else, watch it for that reason. But no, I there's a lot of reasons I wanted you to watch this movie, because there are a lot of things I want to talk to you about. So with that being said, what'd you think of it?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the title too, because I was a little bit confused by the title, because, the film is about, these different sort of parallel, timelines that kind of take place. And we'll get into that for sure. But I was a little confused as why they called it sliding doors. I don't know if it had to do with sort of metaphors for the sliding doors on the subway and then the sliding doors on the elevator. I'm assuming, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a literal reference to the sliding doors on the subway, because that's the pivotal moment. Had she gone on or not gone on? And that's where the story splits into two parts. So I think that's the literal meaning of the title, is the sliding doors. But I think it's also, that idea of what could have been.
It almost feels like the word split should have been in the title in some way, but I don't know. That was just me. So overall, I actually thought it was pretty good.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was a little difficult to kind of pigeonhole it into a genre, because it's a little bit too dark to be a rom-com.
Yeah, I sort of felt that too. And it's not ha-ha, laugh out loud funny, but it always seems to be classified in that romantic comedy sort of bucket just because of the casting. And so many movies in the mid to late 90s are in that romantic comedy, sort of paint them with the same brush. This one always seemed to sort of fall into that. But I think that's why I enjoyed this one as much as I do, because it doesn't really fit that mold as well as some of other, like you watch something like Notting Hill, or you watch, My Best Friend's Wedding or Pretty Woman, something like that. Like those are clearly more romantic comedies. This one, to me, it had a lot more going on. There was definitely the romance there, and there was, a handful of like haha bits, but like I didn't watch just to laugh.
And the parallel timelines make it a little bit too trippy to be like a straightforward drama. So again, it was kind of hard for me to kind of put it into a box, which is cool, which is what I thought was okay about it. Okay, so let's go back to 1998 for a second, shall we?
Sure thing.
Any guesses as to what was the number one film at the box office, the domestic U.S. box office, 1998?
Did Titanic come out in 98?
Titanic came out in 97.
I'm still going to go with Titanic.
Yeah, because Titanic actually came out on December the 19th of 97. So it just dominated 1998. Yeah. Number 2 at the box office was Armageddon. Number 3 was...
We should do that one on this.
We should do that sometime, I guess. I saw it once. I don't really remember much about it.
Oh, I love that movie. Anyway, that's another discussion.
Number 3 was Saving Private Ryan, followed up by number 4, Something About Mary. The Waterboy was number 5. Dr. Dolittle, 6. Deep Impact, number 7. Godzilla, 8. Rush Hour, 9. And rounding out the top 10 was Good Will Hunting. But you had to go way down to 121 to find Sliding Doors.
Yeah, it didn't make a ton of money. It did well on video. It did really well on video.
It finished just above Home Alone 3 and just behind I'll Be Home for Christmas. So, yeah, wasn't a huge commercial success, that's for sure. I want to talk a little bit about the director. Let's talk about him for a second, because I didn't know this guy, Peter Howitt. And he started out his career in the entertainment business as an actor. And he did some bit parts in a few movies. He was in The Name of the Father in 93. Mm-hmm. And he did some small roles on British TV in the 80s and 90s. But this was his first film as a director. And the thing was kind of it. I mean, he went on to direct such masterpieces, Derek, as Johnny English and The Laws of Attraction.
Hey, Johnny English made a lot of money, a ridiculous. I think it made like 2 sequels.
Really? Oh man, it looks so stupid. I remember when it came out. But after that, Peter Howitt seems to have given up showbiz. He hasn't directed anything in 6 years, and he's moved out to Vancouver. So it was interesting. Mm-hmm. And I was reading about it too, and I found out he actually got the idea for this movie after he almost got hit by a car.
Yeah, I read that too. Yeah,
he was like walking in London, and he almost got hit by a car, and he was like, man, what if I got hit then? Like, what would happen? Like, what would be the effect of that? And kind of like piece it all together, and spent like a couple of years writing the script and kind of did it. So we also go into the cast. So let's start with the obvious one, Gwyneth Paltrow. So it was funny, like you mentioned, she never looked better than she did in this. And she's a very interesting looking person, because she kind of is a throwback to old Hollywood, I think. She's like like a classic Hollywood beauty, like that you would see way back in the day. And she's a bit of Hollywood royalty, I guess you could say, because her father was Bruce Paltrow. He was a producer and director, mostly on TV. Like he worked on shows like The White Shadow and St. Elsewhere, and he died very young. He was like 52. He died of cancer. And her mom is Blythe Danner, an actress probably known best to most people as Eric McCormick's mom on Will and Grace. But she won 2 Primetime Emmy Awards for a role in Huff. I'd never even heard of that show. Ran from
I'm not familiar
2004 to 2006. And she won a Tony all the way back in 1970 for Butterflies Are Free. But for Gwyneth, like she was also in the same year, she was in Shakespeare in Love. And she did a topless scene in that movie. More than once, I think. I do my research, that's it.
Well, you sort of got a little bit of side boob in this one for half a second.
Yeah, that was true. I will always sort of know her for naming her daughter Apple. She's kind of a weirdo,
Yeah. It seems to, she was married to the guy from Coldplay, Chris something
Martin.
I get.
Yeah,
that's his name. Thank you.
And the thing was, too, now, even though she's this critically acclaimed actress, she's maybe best known for her relationships. Just like you mentioned, Chris Martin. Before that, she dated Brad Pitt, all over the tabloid. She dated Ben Affleck. But Chris Martin definitely married up. Not to say that he's ugly or anything, but
he's an average-looking guy. He's got a tremendous amount of musical talent. Yeah, it's like Billy Joel, right? Like, who would have thought a guy like Billy Joel would land Christy Brinkley? It's like, what's going on, man? Like, chicks obviously dig musicians, so.
Yeah, I guess that old trope comes through. So I haven't seen a lot of her films. So one time I started watching Shallow Hal like years ago, but I turned it off. It was just garbage. I didn't like it. And when was that? Well, that was like around 2000 or something that came out.
Sounds about right.
But it's got a premise right out of the 80s. You got this overweight, ugly guy who won't date a girl because she's overweight. And then, I don't know, does he hallucinate that she's thin or something? And then he falls for it? It's like, oh, good God. But I will say, I do remember her from the cold opening of Austin Powers Goldmember.
Oh,
Remember,
yeah, right.
That was one hell of a movie opening. Tom Cruise is Austin Powers. And Kevin Spacey and Danny DeVito's Mini-Me. And she was Dixie Normus. So, yeah, I always knew her from that. But I haven't seen a lot of her other films. But, other than this, are you, a fan of her work?
I assume you've seen Shakespeare in Love, though, right?
Yes, I remember. Again, just don't want to research this. So, I kind of looked into it a little bit. I think I remember watching parts of it back when it came out. Because I was like, what is this film that, won Best Picture? And then, like I say, saw the nude scenes with her in it. I thought, okay, this is okay. It's palatable. But I don't know. Are you a fan of her work outside of this?
Yeah, I got nothing against her. She was, more recently she's been in the Iron Man films for Marvel. So she was in Iron Man 1, 2, 3 and the last couple of Avengers.
You had me watch the first one. That's the only one I've seen.
Yeah, she was in, I'm just looking at her IMDb here. 2001, she was in The Royal Tenenbaums, which is a Wes Anderson film, and she was good in that. Again, it was a big ensemble cast, so she was, one of 12 big names in it. So she was good. She was also in The Talented Mr. Ripley in 99, which I thought she was good. She's had, and she was in Great Expectations.
I remember going to see The Talented Mr. Ripley. I went on a date to see that movie. I didn't like that movie. Thought it was dumb. She was in 7 too, wasn't she?
Yes, she had a small part in 7, and she was in the 90s remake of Great Expectation with Ethan Hawke. And, again, her 80s IMDb is pretty impressive. It's pretty memorable. I saw a lot of these movies, largely because I was working at Blockbuster, so I got to see them all for free. I think
when she got started, people probably were confused and thought she was British because she did all these British films and period pieces and stuff like that.
Yeah, she did Emma, which was very popular on video. That came out the year before Sliding Doors, or 2 years before Sliding Doors. Again, did a couple of romantic comedies, and it's anyway. Since then, in the mid to late 2000s, she was in a lot of stuff, but nothing that jumped out. Like she had a small part in the movie Contagion from 2011, which again, massive ensemble cast, but she was actually patient zero in that. Sorry, spoiler for people who haven't seen it. It's been out 13 years. Too bad.
So what about John Hannah? So he played the lead guy in it. He's a Scottish actor. He started off in theater and television, and then he had a big break in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And he had a pretty memorable part in The Mummy because he was Rachel Weisz's brother, right? And he's worked steadily over the years, but mostly in kind of blah roles and blah movies. But I watched an interview with him researching this movie, and it was really interesting because he said this was a very difficult film for him to make because the character had to be upbeat and happy quite a bit, which didn't come naturally to him. He's like, I can play depressed and sad easy, but playing upbeat was really, really a challenge for him, which I thought was interesting because he really seems like a natural. Like it really does come through in his performance, and he's a very positive guy. He's a positive influence in the film. So I actually liked him in this role. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I really like him. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He was also in the TV series Spartacus that they made in 2010. Apparently, he plays a really evil villain in that. I never watched the series, but my wife did, and she knows I like him. And she's like, "Trust me, you watch him in this series, you're gonna think about him in a totally different way." But yeah, he was decent in The Mummy as sort of the brother, the comic relief a little bit, and I loved him in this movie. I thought he was great, and he's appeared in tons and tons of stuff. Obviously, a lot of British television, but. Yeah, no, I've always been a fan of his work.
Just to jump back to Gwyneth Paltrow, because I was also looking this up and I thought it was interesting. You know, we sometimes will talk about like other actors and actresses that were going to maybe get cast in the role. Minnie Driver was originally going to play this part. And
yeah, I read that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then but it had like a really small budget. And so then Sidney Pollack got involved. I don't know if you know Sidney Pollack. He directed Tootsie. Yep. And Out of Africa and stuff. So I guess at one point, this film just kind of was languishing, you know, in development hell. And he got his hands on it and took a look at the script and was like, oh, man, this is great. And he was able to help, you know, get some funding and kind of dump some money into it, get it made. And I also read that Gillian Anderson really wanted to play this part. Like she wanted this.
You see that in the really, 90s. Really, I mean, yeah, she would have fit. I in my mind, I'm thinking of her now. I'm like, that wouldn't have worked. I'm like, no, in the 90s, that would have been too. Yeah,
no, it would have been good. But another cast member I want to talk about is John Lynch. So he was like the bad boyfriend kind of thing. Yeah. Irish actor. He was in The Name of the Father with Daniel Day-Lewis. And then he actually went down to Australia and won like an Australian award, like their version of the Oscars, for a movie called Angel Baby, where he portrayed this real life soccer player, George Best, in that film. I thought he was a little bit miscast in this movie. I don't know about you. Like, I really struggled with him in this role. What about you?
I never seen him before, and I've never seen him since.
Yeah, me neither. But
I'm looking at his stuff. He's worked steadily, but yeah, a lot of TV. And like you said, if he's gone to Australia or he's working in England, which I imagine is probably the case, that would make sense for why I haven't seen a lot of his stuff. But I didn't have any problems with him. I believe that he was the kind of guy who would cheat on his girlfriend. But the problem I had with him was I didn't believe either of those two hot women would want him as much as they both seemed to. That to me was a big problem. I needed him to be a little better looking or have a better personality.
Like, why would a woman like Jean Triplehorn or Gwyneth Paltrow be at all interested in this clown? Like, I don't get it. In that hotel room scene, Jean Triplehorn is basically begging him to take her back and to leave the other woman. And I'm thinking, Jean Triplehorn is one serious tall drink of water. Like, this is an amazing looking woman. What the hell would she be doing with this loser? I feel like this role called for someone like Clive Owen.
Yeah, that would have been a really good one.
A guy that comes off as this two-timing dirtbag, but still has this like raw sexuality that just draws the women back in. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
This guy is like a total loser. Like, he's not good looking enough to pull it off. That's what I thought. So I had a problem with him.
Agree.
Jean Triplehorn, back to her for a second. She was one of the only other members of the cast that I recognized. I remember her from Waterworld. Remember that bomb with Kevin Costner? And go figure, I actually didn't mind that movie. I actually thought it was
Neither did
I.
I mean, I'm a post-apocalyptic kind of guy. I mean, I thought the ending was stupid, but the 2 hours leading up to it were reasonable. I also remember her. She was Tom Cruise's wife in The Firm.
Oh, right. She's an incredibly striking woman, like tall and
she's
beautiful. And oh, man. I never watched the show, but she was in Big Love with Bill Paxton about polygamy.
Yeah, I never watched that one either. But
she was also in this movie called Grey Gardens that was shot up here in Canada. I had a bunch of friends of mine that are actors that were in that film with her, so I know that. But I other than that, I don't really know much about her. She hasn't worked a ton, which is surprising because she's quite talented as an actress. And like I say, she's very, very pretty. So interesting. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the theme of the film. This sort of, it's not really a time loop, you know, because when you think of like movies that have like this sort of time loop, like I think of like, what was that one you made me watch? Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
The Tom Cruise one?
Yeah, they just keep doing the day over and over again, trying to get. Obviously, the most famous example of something like that is Groundhog Day, you know, with Bill Murray and Ann McDowell. This one's different because this is like just parallel timelines, you know, and it asks the question, like, what if just one little thing was different? how would it affect the world? And I think the answer is huge, right? Like one little thing could make a big difference. Like in this case, it was a little girl walking with her Barbie doll. What if, she just moved and then the woman was able to get on the train? Like, and you think about that on a daily basis. How many times in a day does something happen to you where if you just happen to get on the train earlier, or if you happen to do this or got in your car earlier, maybe you would be in a car accident or something. Like things could change, right? And that was the idea. So what are your thoughts on the sort of the overall theme of the film?
Yes, yeah, and this is fascinating. This is a big part of why I enjoy this movie so much. Is I just love the concept. I think it's an interesting premise. I mean, how many times I was watching a hockey game before we came on. How many times I like, oh, if that guy only shot that a half a second sooner, or if he'd only aimed it a little bit. Like I say it every single time I watch a sporting event. You're always like, the only if they did this and what if they had done that, or So it definitely is something that maybe people aren't aware of, but you think about this more than you might realize. And I find that even in my personal life, just like you, it's like, should I take the stairs? Should I take the elevator? It's like just some of these little choices. And you wonder, like, how would my day have been different if I had done X instead of Y? And I like that the movie, in the very beginning, like in the first 5 minutes, you had that split. So now you realize there's two stories moving forward. And I think they did a really good job early in the film. The one, Gwyneth, that finds the husband or the boyfriend cheating on her, she gets a makeover and her hair is very different. So that you can very quickly in the movie tell which version is which. They changed her hairstyle, which I think was a really clever and simple way that made sense for the story to help you, the audience, follow it along. So you're not getting confused. Which one is this again? And which one is that again? Like there were very distinct hairstyles. So that helped. But I also liked that through the course of the movie, there were a handful of times where the same thing was happening in both, we'll call them timelines, in both timelines. So, whether she had done X or Y, these other things would have still progressed in the same way in certain cases. And I thought that was sort of an interesting acknowledgement from the creative team. Even something as simple at the very, near the beginning, when she goes to the bar after she leaves the cheating boyfriend, and what's his name? Hannah is there. What's his character name? James. James is there with his buddy and he sees her crying and he goes over and talks to her. In the other reality where she comes home at a normal time and the boyfriend doesn't get caught cheating, the boyfriend still, because she got mugged, takes her out to get drunk to that bar. Right. And sure enough, James is there as a customer. So, again, it's this interesting acknowledgement that James's life didn't change because Gwyneth Paltrow missed the train. He was still doing certain things no matter what. And that happens a few times in the movie where certain things happen that are in the periphery. They're not necessarily major important parts of the story. And then obviously later in the movie, when she realizes she's pregnant, like you see her faint at the same point in both timelines. Like that was going to happen whether she caught the train or not. So I think that was an interesting acknowledgement. If they're going to do this idea of one little thing can change your life, yes, that's an interesting exercise. But there are so many other things that wouldn't have changed no matter what you did. So that to me is part of what I really enjoyed about this movie is it makes you think, but it also, it acknowledges some of these other things.
And that speaks to the strength of the script, I think, more than anything else.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
As much as I thought the script was good, there was another film that has used this premise, I think, better. It's the year after, in 1999, Run, Lola, Run. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've never seen it.
It's directed by Tom Tykwer. It's a German film, so it's in, subtitles and stuff.
I'm aware of it, and I remember it was a very good renter at Blockbuster. Again, a lot of people won't go to see a foreign film in the theater, but they'll rent it.
I did, actually. I went to see that movie in 1999 in this independent theater in Waterloo, Ontario. I remember I went on a date. I mean, odd film to take a date to, but, a German film with subtitles. What can I say? I know how to woo 'em.
Was your date German at least?
I'm such a ladies' man, so no, she wasn't German. So, but we went to see that film and I liked it. That one's a little bit different. It's got 3 timelines in it, but the same idea. What if but it takes it further. Run, Lola, Run looks at like, what if all along the way, one tiny little thing changed? How would that change the outcome of the day? And like, we're going to have to watch that. I've
never seen it, so try not to spoil it more than that.
No, I'm not spoiling it in any way by saying that. And I will definitely have you watch that at some point because it's on the streamer somewhere and we'll review it, I swear. I also wanted to talk about the soundtrack. of this, because the movie opens up with this catchy song during the opening credits, which kind of caught me. I was like, oh, okay, it's got me right away. Like, and Elton John's on it and stuff. And Elton John and these other artists are not cheap. So I'm thinking like a big part of the budget must have been spent on music rights, because the movie is kind of like, it's a very simple film to make. And then I was reading that Brian May of Queen actually wrote the song Another World for this movie. And then the song wasn't allowed to be used. I don't know if it was the record company. They didn't allow it.
I read that too. Something about the studio that owned the rights to this movie was different than the studio that owned the rights to his music library or something. And so it was a conflict, and he ended up releasing the song anyway, and it did okay, apparently.
Right. So he just put it on his next album and kind of went from there. And then on the closing credits, the song Thank You by Dido comes on. And this song has become a big hit, just like maybe like 2 or 3 years after this movie came out, because the movie was released in 98 and Thank You was released on Dido's debut album in 99. But Eminem sampled it for his song Stan.
Yeah.
And the song just exploded. It went to like number 3 overall on the Billboard chart in 2001. It went to number 1 on the adult contemporary chart that same year. So, that was really big.
I found when I was watching this, one of the things that I do enjoy about this movie is the soundtrack, because in my mind, it's very, and I'm using air quotes here, it's a very 90s soundtrack. Even though it had some of those older songs like the Elton John songs, the majority of the songs, even the score, I could tell this was a 90s movie simply from that. Having lived through the 90s, the musical style was quite unique, and which is not to say that was the... I'm not saying that it's like, oh my God, this was the best music ever. Not even for a second. But I'm just saying the music was very of its time and of a certain style and a certain sound. And this was a very typical 90s soundtrack and score, but in a good way. Like, I think it worked well for this movie, but in my mind, that more than anything else dated the movie for me. Like, all the music as I'm listening to it, I was immediately back in 1998. So. That's
a good point. I want to talk a little bit about go back to the timelines you mentioned. I almost think of it like there's a bad timeline and a good timeline. Like, the bad one is where she doesn't find out about his screwing around right away and she stays with him, right? But in that one, she's unhappy. She has to take a job waiting tables. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And delivering sandwiches. She has to work 2 jobs.
And then in the good timeline, she finds out early. She gets the bad news early, but she leaves him and she meets the good guy. She opens up her own PR company, and she's happy. Like you mentioned, she changes her hairstyle and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was interesting. And then she dies in the timeline with the good guy, but she lives in the timeline with the bad guy. As soon as she opened her eyes in the timeline with the bad guy, I totally knew where it was. Like, she's going to leave him. Yeah. And she's going to meet him.
Well, of course.
You just know that,
Yeah.
And then she has like these slight memories of the other timeline, like the cafe and the bridge and stuff like that. So
yeah, one of the things I remember when this movie came out, I was in the 90s. I had a subscription to Entertainment Weekly magazine, so you would read all the movie reviews and stuff. And I remember when this came out, it got pretty reasonable reviews. And I remember the one guy said, although the movie's good, the only thing that I really dislike about this movie is that the better looking Gwyneth Paltrow dies at the end. And so that just sort of always stuck with me, that it was like, wah. The idea that even though the unhappy Gwyneth is the one that carries on, I liked the idea that that she ends up meeting James in the elevator or the lift at the end, almost as if to say, like, it sort of goes back to that thing where some things are going to happen regardless of the choices you make, and other things are not. The idea of the difference between fate and choice. And so to me, that was sort of a little last minute, just sort of acknowledgement that these two people were destined to be together, right, regardless of circumstance and regardless of timeline and regardless of all the rest of this. So, some people might have felt it was a little heavy handed and a little bit too neat a way to end the movie. Like, let's just put a little bow on it and tie up all the loose ends and you still get your happy ending despite the fact that you get your unhappy ending. But I'm fine with it. It is what it is. You can read into it a lot, but you don't have to.
For me, the moral of the story, looking at the two timelines, was it's better to get the bad news up front and deal with it and move on than it is to escape the bad news and then just have everything kind of fester You know, that was my takeaway as I was watching it. So,
well, and I think part of it is you got to, again, the movie's almost 25 years old. I think at this point you got to remember, you know, the way the world was versus the way the world is now. And I think it was a lot of the idea of the reinforcement that you got to go, girl. Like, you got to be your best self, and don't let a man tell you what to do or tie you down or any of that stuff. And I think, obviously, that still happens to a certain extent now, but I think that there's definitely been more strides to encourage women to, you know, live your best life. And, you know, your boyfriend's a douchebag, like, dump him.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting how they were sort of juxtapositioning the two guys. So it gets to the point where you don't trust the good guy. Because in one scene, he's on the phone with her, and then he hangs up and he talks to this other woman in the room. And I was like, oh, no, there's another woman. And then you see his mother's frail and she's staying with him. So I was like, oh, that other woman's just a caretaker. That's all. Okay, I'm good to go. We're good to go. Yeah. And then later you see him with her and they kiss. And I was like, oh, jeez. No. And the secretary is like, oh, he's out with his wife. And I'm like, oh, my God. But one thing that struck me in all of this, with both of these guys, when at that point, when you're thinking that the other guy's got a wife and then the other guy's cheating and stuff, how do these guys have time to lead two lives? Like, I can barely function in one. Like, I'm so busy between my job and my kids and my wife. I'm watching this movie. I'm like, I can't imagine having a whole other identity going on, you know, or some other side life thing or something like that. Oh, it's just crazy.
Wait, you don't have a mistress? I totally pegged you as a guy who has like a young hot mistress who's like fighting over you.
No young hot woman wants me. Trust me. I thought it was interesting in two things I want to mention. One was a quote from the film that stood out to me. When Jean Triplehorn says to him, I'm a woman. We don't say what we want. We reserve the right to get pissed off, though, if we don't get what we want. And that's what makes it so fascinating. And I thought, what an interesting quote that was. Yeah. But one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie was the kissing scene where they're under the bridge on the boat. Remember? Oh, okay. Yeah. I really like that scene because it has all the stereotypes of the typical Hollywood kiss scene, you know, and she even says that. She's like, oh,
they acknowledge it in the dialogue, which sort of, you know, again, how do you acknowledge it? You literally call it out in the dialogue. Yeah, I agree. I think that was a good way to handle it.
She's like, well, there's water, there's a boat, it's nighttime, there's lights, you know? So of course he moves in to kiss her and she turns away. But his reaction was just great because he understands. And he's like, it's okay, you know? And, you know, and then he's like talking away and then she just totally kisses him. And I like that. And I like how it's her that initiates it because she needed to be ready, you know, and the fact that she got out of this crappy relationship with this loser. And here she is with this guy and she, you know, she doesn't let him kiss her and he's totally understanding. And that just makes her like him even more. So I thought that whole scene was just really, really good. So again, that's more the rom-com-y thing coming out. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Overall, I thought that this movie has a lot of stuff going on in it. It's not just a rom-com, like I said. It's a kind of dark drama in places and kind of trippy at times. But overall, I thought it was pretty good. So,
what would you give it as a score, 1 to 10?
Ooh, I don't think I could go so last week I went with 7.5 for Night Shift, and I really like that movie. I think I'd give this a 7. I go as high as a 7 because I actually thought it was better and it surprised me a bit. It kind of feels more like about a 5, but it was just pulled off maybe by the cast good enough, except for the bad boyfriend. He was terrible. But the rest of them pulled it off enough to bring it up to a 7.5. That's what
I think that's sort of where I am. I think I'm probably going to go with the 7.5, but I think that's right. I think we're both sort of in the same ballpark there, and I think that's good. I think most people that watch it, at least based on the feedback I got when I worked at the video store, most people that watched it liked it. You know, there were a lot of people that were like, I'm glad I saw it. I don't have to watch it again. But there are people like me who are like, you know what? Give me a year or two. I wouldn't mind revisiting that. And I found that I've like I said, I've revisited this movie now twice in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, and I enjoyed it. And I think it's one of those ones that has actually aged well. It didn't really feel outdated. Like I said, the soundtrack really made it feel 90s, but I was okay with that. I didn't feel like it was a 90s in a bad way kind of movie. So no, I'm 7.5 for me. I think that's a good place, a good score.
Yeah, and a lot of times I mention how like movies I wouldn't watch again. You know, this one I would probably watch again. Like if I had the opportunity, I wouldn't go to my way to watch it.
Right.
But if it came on, I would watch it again. And funny enough, going back to the original film that I was talking about at the top of the podcast, 2001, I don't think I'd watch that again. Yeah, like I've seen it once, I've experienced it, I'm good. I can move on. But yeah, this is the kind of movie, like if it came on again, like, yeah, I'd watch it again. I think I would.
Well, and once you sort of know where it's going and the idea that, you know, it's like any movie where there's sort of a reveal at the end. You want to go back and see it again to see if the clues are there and to see what you missed. Like, what can you pick up on sort of knowing what's going to happen next? I think there's a few details that you would pick up on. Let me ask you this. I assume you watched this with your wife. Did she enjoy it?
Funny enough, I did not watch it with my wife. I watched it alone.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh.
So I wasn't able to get her take on it. But I do agree with you that I think Gwyneth Paltrow also was like incredibly good looking in it. There was like scenes where she didn't even wear makeup or anything. She's just a sort of a classical beauty. She's very unique looking. So.
Yeah, there's a scene where once she moves in with her friend, where she's in the kitchen and doing dishes and they're having a conversation about like who's on the phone. And the scene is very short. Like she's only in the scene like maybe got like 10 or 20 seconds of screen time, but she's wearing like this little crop top shirt. I was just like, oh my God. Like, and it's one of those ones, like you said, she's not like fully makeup and everything. It just like seems very, I mean, I'm sure there was makeup on it. It's a movie, but it just seemed like a very casual, natural. And you're like, holy crap, is this woman beautiful? Like,
and I think that's why she was well cast in this role. It helped make it work, you know, except for the fact that the loser boyfriend.
Yeah.
Why would she be with that guy? You know, crazy. Yeah, no, overall, thought it was good. So what do you say we do this? All right.
Fun with Caveman.
Derek, what do you say we just do some good old-fashioned trivia this week?
Oh, okay.
I thought I'd just line you up with some trivia questions. But let's make it 1998 trivia.
Oh, boy. Okay. I was just talking about how I lived through it. Let's see if I remember it.
Okay, so this is going to be pretty easy. I think. What film won the Best Picture Oscar from 1998?
Was that not Titanic?
No, I'm sorry. It was Shakespeare in Love. Titanic won for 97 because it came out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking. Yeah, okay. I'm a year behind.
Yeah, so the year came out. Oh, so follow-up question.
I would have got that wrong. I would have said Saving Private Ryan anyway.
Yeah, so follow-up question. What film should have won Best Picture in 1998?
Saving Private Ryan.
That is correct. That is correct. All right, 1998. In the film Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yep.
What gonzo journalist did Johnny Depp portray?
Oh yeah, it was. I can even picture the cover of the movie. It's Johnny Depp. I think Javier Bardem was in that too, no, Bill Neal told the story. It was Hunter S. Thompson.
It was previously.
I almost gave up. I'm like, I'm gonna give.
I know. I didn't think we were gonna. Previously portrayed by Bill Murray in 1979's Where the Buffalo Roam. I don't know if you know that. Okay, so 1998 saw the success of the asteroid disaster film that you love, Armageddon.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
However, though, Derek, that wasn't the only asteroid disaster film that
No, it was
year. Not. Can you name the other asteroid disaster film from 1998?
I sure can. It was also in the top 10. You mentioned it earlier. Deep Impact.
I did. All right, let's flip over to the Golden Globes from 1998. Okay. In the category Best Actor in a Drama.
Yep.
Who won? And I'm going to give you all the nominees. Just tell me who won. Okay.
Hang on. Let me think for a quick second. Let me just think here. All the nominees. Don't tell me. Okay. No, I'm not going to get it. I need the list.
Okay. So it was Nick Nolte for Affliction.
Yep.
Tom Hanks, Saving Private
Ryan. That would have been my guess.
Ian McKellen, Gods and Monsters.
Oh, yes.
Stephen Fry for Wild. And Jim Carrey for The Truman Show. Who won the Golden Globe that year for Best Actor in a Drama?
I'm pretty sure it was Ian McKellen for Gods and Monsters.
It was Jim Carrey for The Truman Show.
Huh. Did not know that.
Yeah.
I knew he was nominated, but...
Yeah. All right. This singer was arrested in 1998 for engaging in a lewd act in a public restroom in Beverly Hills, California. Can you name him?
Was it George Michael?
All right, Derek, you mentioned Titanic, and Titanic just, broke all box office records back in the day. One of the box office records that it broke was it had the highest single day box office gross ever. However, it didn't occur until its 58th day in theaters.
Wow.
It earned $13 million in a single day. What a monster take. So I'm gonna give you a hint. You know, the film.
You don't need to give me the hint. You're gonna ask me what day it was? Because I know. It was Valentine's Day.
It was. It makes a lot of sense, right? Valentine's
you
Day,
said
1998.
58 days, and I'm like, I knew it came out in December, so I'm like, January, February. I'm like, it has to be Valentine's Day.
It was Valentine. Obviously, everybody took, their date to go see Titanic in February. All right. In 1998, this former WWF wrestler was elected governor of the state of Minnesota. Can you name him?
Jesse the Body Ventura.
Nice. I'm impressed, and I don't impress Easy McMahon. All right.
He had the best political commercials when he was running. If you could find them on YouTube, they are worth the rabbit hole you're going to have to go down to find them. They were fantastic.
I'll have to go and check them out, that's for sure. Okay, in 1998, Mila Kunis was cast in the Fox sitcom That 70s Show. Everybody who auditioned for that show was required to be at least 18 years old. But she told the casting directors that she was 18. And she was in all 200 episodes of the show. But do you know how old she was when she was cast on That 70s Show? How old was Mila Kunis?
I know she was younger. I think she was 16.
She was 14 years old when she was cast on that show, believe it or not. Hard to believe. Okay, May 27th, 1998. This comedian and actor was shot to death by his wife. He was only 49 years old when he was murdered. Can you name the actor?
Was it Phil Hartman?
It was. Okay, you did really good. I got a bonus question for you, though. It's a little bit tougher one.
Sure.
After a 25-year hiatus, this director returned to the big screen with The Thin Red Line.
Yeah, it was. I knew that was going to be your question. His name was, you got to give me a second here. It was Terrence Malick?
Yes. I don't really know what the big deal was either then. Like, because he'd only really done Badlands in 73 and Days of Heaven in 78. Like, it wasn't like he was like Scorsese.
Yeah, I don't know. But I remember it was the Oscars. There were the 5 movies. It was
a big deal.
It was the 2 World War II movies with Thin Red Line and Saving Private Ryan. There were the 2 movies about Queen Elizabeth. One, Elizabeth with Kate Blanchett and Shakespeare in Love. And then I honestly don't remember what the last one was. Was it Life is Beautiful?
Yeah, it might have been.
Which was also a World War II movie. Like, it was like all the movies were either about this or this. So.
All right, so next week we're going to take a little bit of a break. We got some stuff we're going to do next week, but in 2 weeks' time we're going to be back. And I'll tell you what, Derek, we're going to be joined by Chopped contestant and fellow podcaster Robbie Rose. We're going to talk about our favorite cooking shows on TV. I got a bunch from Gen X that should be a blast.
I was going to say, and I'm more all the more recent ones. Yeah. So this should be a good discussion. And honestly, I can't wait to talk to him about being on Chopped. Like, I love that show. So cool. So until next time, I'm Chris McBrien. You're Derek Myers, and we're saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.